no taking days off. Ain't no taking breaks. Ain't none of that. None of that. You got to do the work. So let's go to talk about all of the Colorado Buffalo players that were drafted and undrafted. Where are they now? As you guys know, Shador Sanders was drafted in the sixth round. But we have Jimmy Horn Jr. that was drafted, LeJontay Wester, Travis Hunter, and we have a few of Colorado players that were undrafted. Via the Buffalo Wire, Colorado Buffaloes not drafted, as you guys can see. And I've already done the dirty work for you by searching up where are these guys currently. As you guys know, if you go to ESPN and you see any type of stats for these players, that means that they are on a team. And for instance, if you go to a player like Mark Bassett, Cardell Thomas, Herman Smith, and you don't see any stats like you see for Shador, LeJontay, Cameron, Simon Craig, Jimmy Horn Jr. all have stats. And you guys see they aren't on a team currently. But that doesn't mean we won't see them in the future on the practice squad. But 9 times out of 10, if you're not available for any team during preseason, you might not be able to be available for a team practice squad. As you guys can see, so far, these are all of the players that were undrafted going into the 2025-2026 NFL season. And as you guys can see, some players were picked up. BJ Green was picked up by the Jacksonville Jaguars, who also have, if I'm not mistaken, Travis Hunter, of course. And they also have Simon Craig. So you got 3 players from Buffalo on the same squad. You got 2 players from Buffalo on the same squad. So NFL teams are aware of I was about to say Chicago Bulls, the Colorado Buffaloes, as a, what would you call it? Not a draft, a carousel, a factory of NFL ready players. That's what I want to see. So they do recognize, just like Alabama, Georgia, you guys know all of the big schools that are literally factories of producing NFL type talent. Alabama being number 1, of course. But here we go. So currently, and when was this article released? April 24, 2025. So it is August. So many of these players, like I say, like we saw with Will Shepard, if I'm not mistaken. I already got his information pulled up, so you guys don't have to do any running around. After going unselected in the 2025 NFL Draft, Shepard was signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so that would have been 2 teams with 3 different Colorado Buffalo players. Jacksonville would have had, if I'm not mistaken, Travis Hunter, BJ Green, and they would have had Simon Craig. And then Tampa would have had, oh no, never mind. They already had Will Shepard listed as it. I guess this was before he was released. So scratch that. And then he was released May 9th. And then on July, he signed with the Green Bay Packers. And as you guys can see, Shador had the best performance. LeJontay had the second best. Simon Craig had the third best. Jimmy had the 4th. Will Shepard had the 5th. Travis Hunter had the 6th. Now, oh no, my bad. I got that mixed up. Will actually had the 3rd best performance. Based on individual performance at their respective position, who had the better impact or technically most stats. That's the way I was looking at it. Who put up the best stats, the best numbers for their 2 receptions, 4 yards per. Jimmy Horn had the less. So currently, where are all of the players that were eligible for the 2025 NFL Draft? We're going to start with the players that did not make it to a team and stay. Punter Mark Bassett. As a punter, it's going to be hard for you to make the NFL. You have to go literally perfect and make an impact for your team. I mean, if you punting, you got to punt at least 90 yards per. That got to be your average for a team to even look at you. Mark Bassett. Where is he now? He's not in the NFL. Not sure what he's doing outside of the NFL. So, Cardell Thomas, offensive lineman, 65. Out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Where is he now? I'm not sure. We're not here to talk about where they are personally in their life. We're talking about football. That's what we're going to stay on. Herman Smith III never made an impact like Salmon Craig, like Shiloh Sanders did defensively for the Colorado Buffaloes, consistently enough where you would turn on the game and you would see his name. So, of course, he's nowhere to be found. We already talked about Will Shepard. Shidozi Onwankwo. Oh, I think I butchered that. Spent a lot of time in college. As a defensive tackle, didn't make a huge enough impact, a big enough impact. You guys got to remember, if you only have 11 total tackles, 8 solo, 3 assisted, no sacks as a defensive tackle, if you put up numbers like that in college and you stay you play all 5 years, no team is going to come call it, man. He didn't make enough of a defensive impact. So, probably not going to be anywhere near a football team in the foreseeable future. And it's hard to gauge linemen statistically outside of, we know Colorado had one of the worst offensive lines in the nation. So, offensively, there's no need to even talk about him because they had one of the worst, top 10 worst offensive lines in the nation. Had he been better, that 4-7 record that we seen the first year would have probably been 7-4. And that the following year, they could have probably keeping it moving. Shane Cooks, I think we heard a lot about Shane Cooks individually. And I guess that could be just because of his personality, if I'm not mistaken. But to go from 29 to 19, 12 to 9, you really had a decline. Not good enough to last in the end. Levante Bentley. Dang. If you stayed this long in college, no need to even talk about him. Okay, now we get into the players that are actually on NFL teams. Shout out to those guys, but that goes to show you, you got to literally set yourself apart from the bunch. If you're putting up those type of numbers as a defensive end, defensive tackle, and not making an impact as a defensive end and a defensive tackle, your bread and butter is going to come from sacks. If he had like 8 sacks, 9 sacks, 10 sacks, 12 sacks, then teams going to come calling. BJ Green, on the other hand, as you guys can see, his debut with the Jacksonville Jaguars, it is preseason. 1 tackle in the 25-31 loss. It's crazy how these guys lost. But it is what it is. BJ Green, 1 tackle, 1 assisted tackle. He was out there. I wish we could see how many minutes or snaps. I wish they track snaps. Why wouldn't they not track snaps? I want to see how many snaps or minutes he's played to kind of gauge whether or not that 1 tackle. And what is his position? Oh, he's a defensive end. That's not good. But like I said, how many snaps did he play? How many quarters did he play? Did he stay in long enough to even make a impact? Shiloh is the next one. We're going from least to greatest impact. Of course, Shiloh is a safety, so we're going to look for more of the quarterbacks. How would you say? Will the quarterback attack his side of the field? Or will the quarterback look his way, the opposing team's quarterback? It's kind of hard to gauge a safety because they're not a cornerback. And it's kind of hard to gauge cornerbacks because if a cornerback is just so good, just take Richard Sherman, Reeves Island. A lot of quarterbacks will avoid their side of the field, so they will have to make their impact with tackles. If they're coming off the blitz, sacks, forced fumbles, passes deflected. This is how you would track those guys. Travis Hunter, on the other hand, did not make an impact. It was not as impactful as he should have been. Like I say, I wish I could see how many quarters, how many snaps, how many minutes. Like in the NBA. In the NBA, we see how many possessions, we see how many minutes are played by a particular player and possessions by a team. The NFL is just lazy. ESPN is just lazy to not track that stuff. But they track everything else, it seems like. Everything else. Non-receiving yards, 2 receptions. He had 2 targets, so every ball that was thrown his way, he caught it, but he did make an impact. 4 yards to catch. Normally you see this in the high 10s. Not much of a 20s, but you see this average catch in the high 10s. If you see that above 10, you know every time a receiver catches the ball, it's an automatic first down. If you see that in the high 10s. His debut, Travis Hunter's debut, is something to forget. And when you watch these players, just look at the body language. A lot of them was talking about nerves. Oh, I was scared. Not scared to play it. Well, I was nervous. I just wanted to get out there and get the... Every player from Colorado that I heard talking outside of Shador was nervous. And their play on the field showed that. Shador, on the other hand, in his press conference, he said, I wasn't really nervous. I just wanted to get out there and play. So I do realize that. And that's a mental thing. And when you going into the game with that type of, what would you call it, calmness around you, it rubs off on the other players because other players see their teammates. And some people are just natural born leaders, and some people are just natural born followers. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody can be a leader. Not everybody can be a follower. And it's one thing to be a follower and you just being a follower. But it's another thing to be a follower and you learn from who you're following to match him or surpass him. Now, if you're just out here blindly following, that's a different story. So Shador, in the way Cleveland carried themselves, you see that Shador calmness and veteran type leadership that he's already displaying in the way he's talking and communicating. He's talking and communicating, in my opinion. It's no knock on Jimmy Horn, but he's just listen to the way, these guys talk in their interviews. You can see who grew up with a father figure. You can see who didn't. It's not a knock on him. We all not. And I ain't going to say that. I'll say you can see who grew up with the right resources in terms of communicating and who didn't grow up with the right resources of communicating. I'm not going to use the father because a lot of people grow up without fathers in their household, but they become some of the most articulate people in the world. Who knows? Albert Einstein probably grew up fatherless. But so the way I worded that, it was a little bit wrong. I should say you can see who grew up with, training and being able to articulate and communicate without, it being hard to listen to, for lack of a better way to put that. It's just being real. Shador can communicate a lot better than we see all these other players being able to communicate as rookies. Now going on to Cameron Simon Craig. Crazy name, but hey, it is what it is. Cameron Simon Craig. I wanted to say CRC, but you got to say CRSC. Too long. Now, 2 tackles, 2 assisted, 2 total. Did he have 2 assisted tackles and 2 total tackles? I guess the assists count as total, and they are not 2 different stats, which is stupid. You should take out total and just put solo assisted. But I guess total means solo plus assisted or just assist. It's crazy. You got that, but you don't got the minutes played, snaps played, and the quarters played. Preseason, solo, no solo. So he was granted, this is how you got use safety. He got some solo assisted tackles. and he's on the team with Travis Hunter. And the defensive end, I forgot his name, but you guys know they got 3 players from Colorado. Now we're going to Will Shepherd, who we all knew was good enough because who was the third best receiver on the squad? Was it Will Shepherd or was it LeJohntay Wester? And now that we think about it, Colorado had a nice rotation of wide receivers. They had a nice wide out room. Now the reason why offensively they didn't make that much of an impact, it goes to show you that no matter how good you are, from quarterback to receiver to tight ends, if that offensive line is not at least top 10, you're not going anywhere in college. You better take a page out of the Mountain West and look at what the Boise State, Idaho Broncos, or Boise State Broncos, or whatever Mustangs, whatever they. Take a page out of their book and see what they did with that offensive line in terms of running. Now, pass blocking, run blocking are different. The schemes are different. But all of these wide receivers from Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, all of their top receivers are on their team right now. Because we just Googled most of their offensive linemen and their defensive linemen where they were the weakest on the offense in the trenches. They were the weakest. They were the weakest. And it's not coincidental that we don't see any of the defensive linemen and their offensive linemen in the NFL right now. It's not a coincidence. So all of you players out there in high school right now, take a listen. LeJohntay Wester. Now, on special teams, he was special. That's why it's called special teams. And I think that's where he's going to make his impact for the most part. But he said, hold on. I could be wide receiver number 4 on this roster. As you guys can see, they got all of Rashad Bateman. They got Zay Flowers, DeAndre Hopkins. So special teams is going to be where LeJohntay Wester is until DeAndre Hopkins retire or at least leaves. Because I don't see Zay Flowers going anywhere anytime soon. If I'm not mistaken, Zay Flowers is their wide receiver 1. Because he had probably the most targets last season, right? I could see all of their. Let's see what Rashad Bateman was able to. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure, Zay Flowers was their top target outside of the tight end. But LeJohntay Wester is going to do most of his impactful damage on special teams. And last but not least, we got Cleveland's own Shedeur Sanders, who had the best impact, best performance. Like I said, watching Shedeur and the way he carried himself versus all of the other players in Colorado kind of showed me that, you know what? He was the most ready and primed for success in this particular moment. Now, I could not find footage on every player. For some reason, when you search up, any given player that you want to see, I couldn't find everybody's plays for the most part. But what I will do is kind of show you guys. Oh no, we're not leaving just yet. Let's kind of see.
Hey, nothing for.
Oh my God. My bad. I'm gonna have to mute some of this stuff. I want to see all of Travis Hunter's plays. But you guys, it's available for you guys out there. We don't have to go through everybody's, footage. But just know, Travis Hunter he looked nervous out there. And he was the one that was doing the most talking, the most dancing in training camp. He was the most hype out of every player that I've seen. Now, in terms of calmness and looking like they're ready, I would say Shedeur for sure was number 1. Jimmy Horn was number 2. And Hunter, don't change who you are, but just tone it back a little bit. In terms of the dancing and all that in practice. If you coming out there doing that, I don't think they want you to be dancing in practice. You need to be focused, 100% focused. But LeJohntay Wester, on the other hand, showed you what opportunity can do. Mind you, the Buffalo Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens saw something in LeJohntay that said, you know what? Even with all these receivers we got, we can use this guy. They need somebody on special teams because I don't remember them having an impactful player on special teams in terms of, I don't know what that celebration was, but when you run it back for 87 yards, don't kick it to Hester. Don't kick it to Wester. Got a dime and a 2C, you don't realize she